I did wrong. Oh.
Okay.
Well, welcome everybody and good day to Sally Speaks. I am Sally, your success and mindset mentor, and I want to ask you a couple questions. Do you ever feel like you were made for more? That you deserve to have more joy, more laughter, more abundance, more freedom in your life? You're not alone. There's so many people that are experiencing the same thing. And my mission is to really empower and guide you in creating your life on your terms. And today I am very excited to introduce to you Jennifer Elhajj. And she has been able to do just that, create life on her terms. So when I met Jennifer back in, I think it was March,
Correct.
we were both at an event and we happened to find each other. For some reason, there was something that pulled us together. And Jennifer is just the sweetest, most loving person you will ever find. And she truly is full of joy. So I'm really excited today because you're going to learn so much from her, as she and her family have done just what I talked about, creating a life that they love by living outside the box, laying down their fears, and picking up their future. So Jennifer, from what I know, is a professional speaker. She homeschools her children, of which she has 5 children. And she's a social marketer. She's a very busy woman, but yet she has this calmness about her and this centeredness about her that I really, really admire. And so I think today you're going to really enjoy as we learn a little bit more about Jennifer and the adventure that she and her family went on. So now, first of all, before we get started, what year was it that you and your husband made the decision to change your life?
So we made the decision in 2015 and started making all the necessary changes to put it into effect, and we're able to actually launch in 2016 and do something pretty incredible.
Awesome. So now it is, I think most families and individuals that are going to be on this line at all ages are going to be really inspired by your story, because you've done something that a lot of us have thought about, or thought maybe I should do this in my future when I retire, or maybe we should take this adventure. And so the adventure that I understand was that you and your husband made a decision. Your husband's name's Ali, right?
Ali,
Yeah, so Ali and Jennifer made a decision to sell most of their belongings, take their family of 5 children and mom and dad, and go into an RV and travel through all 50 United States and end up in Alaska. And I hear that you went a few adventures in Canada, which is where I'm from as well.
Yes, lots of beautiful provinces.
Now, this is a big decision, especially with 5 kids. And, because I hear a lot of, families that don't have any children, like a young couple starting out, they'll do that, they'll adventure around, or some retirees, but very seldom do I hear about full families doing this. So tell me a little bit about why you made this decision in the first place.
You're going to laugh. You know how they say, like, many are the plans in a man's heart, but it's God's purpose that prevails.
Yeah.
So let me just tell you, we initially began this thinking that we were not, RVing was not on our mind at all. We knew we were called to a change. We wanted to do something different. We've always been a little weird that way. So that's already in our mindset, just to be to think differently than the norm, right? And I had always wanted to live outside the country. I had my children studying French for years, thinking that it would be a move to France to live for a couple of years. And so we started getting everything in place to move to France. And everything was moving forward. And I kid you not, I found a gorgeous chateau in France, in the Loire Valley.
Oh my gosh.
And the rent was, I couldn't believe it. It was crazy reasonable because it was in an area that just did not have a lot of industry. So it was not in high demand, and it kind of required somebody coming in with like coming in with a US salary and working there made it possible for us. And so I was talking to the owner, we were getting everything situated. And my husband then found out that his work would not allow it. They allowed remote. So we had been under the impression that as long as he remained on his time zone, that it would be fine. And that wasn't the case. It has to be domestic. So
oh no, that must have been heartbreaking.
It was really quite devastating because we really were in that mindset. And so I'm thinking a chateau, and I told my sister, oh, I know exactly what we're going to do for you when you come to visit. And she said, what is it? Is it you're going to play Be Our Guest and like sing a little song and dance when I come to visit, right? I'm like, oh, you got it. Yes, it's exactly what But as it turns out, we went from our idea of chateau to downsizing to 400 square feet, one bathroom for 7 people. And just when friends didn't work out, I mean, the totally opposite kind of scenario became available to us. But I feel like that really kind of helped shift our mindset, the idea of France, and it helped us kind of even start thinking outside the box as a reality and not just a dream.
So now that France dream has gone, trying to live a different life than most people that you would know. And I'm sure there's also people say, why would you even want to do that? And now you're flipping all of a sudden to say, okay, another opportunities come up.
Right.
And now we're going to take the family into that 400 square foot RV. So tell us, how did you even do that? Like, what was the decision around that and working with the children?
Lots of prayer over there. I can't even tell you. There were times when I was just literally on my face in prayer, like, if this is what you are calling me to, you have to prepare me. I had my mind in such a different zone with the idea of doing something just that seemed magical to me that I had to completely reframe my thoughts. And so again, I think any big decision that we do to get what we want, to pursue what we want, and especially to pursue something that's outside of the box and outside of the norm, starts with mindset and with a shift right there. And so for us, and honestly, for the people we met on the road, it all began with, finding a way to make an income on the road. So for my husband, fortunately, he's a software engineer. So, anything in computers makes it pretty easy to go virtual. And in today's world, it's not just computers. There are so many jobs that are now virtual. It's easier than ever, except maybe fuel prices. It is easier than ever
changed a bit.
to do the RVing. But we met people on the road who were making an income in all different areas, from doctors and nurses to people in the oil field industry, the military, people who began their own network marketing businesses and grew it so that they were living full-time off of that. People who were taking contract work, people who were mobile detailers or repair people. It was the sky's the limit. But most of these people were leaving full-time steady careers and were willing to take that risk to make that shift and make that change. And fortunately, we didn't have to change careers, but he left a phenomenal, very steady job at Disney behind for startup companies. So that was our big risk, leaving behind pension plan and, everything that came along with that. And all the benefits. Honestly, Disney for a family with 5 kids was a magical sort of, but we had to be willing. And I think you always have to be willing to sacrifice some things to get the things you want most.
Yeah. And I think, as you're talking about, the mindset revolved around it and how you had to pivot your mindset to say, okay, so if we're going to do this, what do I have to approach differently? Right? And how do I think differently to be able to make this happen and to embrace it? Because for a lot of people, change is the scariest piece. It's that fear of the what ifs.
Right, exactly.
So when you reframe it, tell me a little bit about what you did personally to reframe that, because a lot of people struggle with that reframing.
I know. Again, for me, I'm a person of faith, so it was just a ton of prayer. I really dug into that. for me. And I feel like I could have never gotten there without it.
Yeah.
But just something clicked in me. It took 9 months. It's like a birth, right?
Yeah.
It took
Yeah.
9 months from the time we bought the motorhome. And literally, I really felt this was a calling. So we bought that motorhome for me in complete faith, not in a desire to do this at all. I really,
Okay.
honest to goodness, I thought I would hate it and that I was just being obedient to what I was called to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how strongly I believe that we were going to have a purpose
Yeah.
in being on the road. And so I was practically hyperventilating outside the RV dealership when we left after making the purchase. My husband was like, "You can't even drive home. I'm going to have to drive you home," because I'm like, "Oh, what have we done? Oh my gosh." You know, I was just ready to die in
Yeah.
fear over this. It was becoming consuming and paralyzing. But it was 9 months between the time that happened and
Mhm.
everything else was in place for a virtual career and the house rented out and 90% of our belongings sold and everything else stored. You know, getting to that point, it just that whole process,
Mm.
as I went along, I started trying to focus on the positive and not the what ifs, what if something bad happened, but
Mhm.
what if we discover something amazing? What if we built this
Perfect.
incredible like memory bank as a
Mm.
family that,
Yeah.
you know, I thought to where my own family, when my brother and sister and I would get together with my parents, we were always, you know, laughing and joking and thinking about the funny things that happened on vacations or
Yep.
something like that. And we would recount those endlessly. And you probably do it too.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like
Exactly.
so fun to like dig into those memories and just laugh together. And I thought, you know, maybe we can build memories like that. So my
Mm.
what ifs started focusing on the positive. And by the time we hit the road, I could not wait to do it. I could not wait.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. And I think,
Yeah.
that's one thing that I teach with people is how we end up in our negative thought patterns and
Mm-hmm.
our what ifs, but we don't do the right what ifs. We do the
Mm-hmm.
what if something fails? What if something goes
Right.
wrong? What if I won't like this? What if, as opposed to reframing it to what's
Right.
the possibilities?
Yes,
Right?
exactly. You're so right. And you're so
Yeah.
positive. When we first met, I knew that about you. Sally's all over there like, "Oh, we met. And I can't remember exactly what." And I'm like, "I know what brought us together. You were there to encourage me at that moment." Like,
Aw.
yes, absolutely. From the moment I met Sally, like
Aw,
you
you're
were
so
such an
sweet.
encourager. So you are gifted in that.
Yes, thank you. I think that, some of the questions that you even asked are so powerful, right? The questions that you asked to be able to reset your mindset and to give this an
Yeah.
opportunity, because what's the worst case scenario that could happen? You turn around and come back.
Right.
Right? So now tell us if someone else, or so tell us what the adventure was like with your family, because you were homeschooling as well. And how
Right.
old were your
Mhm.
kids at the time?
They were from 3 to 13 when we left and from 6 to 16 when we returned.
Wow.
Quite a big, and there are 5 of them. So it's kind of stair step down,
Mhm.
lots of different ages and lots of different perceptions about, you know, what to expect for each one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So how did the older kids, because they're taken away
Yeah.
from their friends and their schooling,
Mhm. Yeah.
how were they in handling the whole situation? Did they
Yeah.
also?
So yeah, the older two they were the only ones really with difficulty in hitting the road, and walking kind of away from everything that they had known.
Mhm.
And they struggled a little bit. So we made sure, you know, we got both of them got phones a little bit sooner than we would have normally done that so
Mhm.
that they could stay connected. We would occasionally call in or Zoom in so they could talk with their youth groups and
Okay.
share their updates. And so I feel like our local community and connections here did a good job of trying to keep them plugged in
Oh,
and keep
nice.
people aware of things that they were doing, where are they now, and that kind of thing. And it made them feel special. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you it was all like warm fuzzies on the road. Like they really, they had a harder time with it. But, you know, those are my children, right?
Mhm.
We met families go, as a matter of fact, at the first campground that we were at in our, we joined a campground membership. And in the first campground there, we met a family of 8. Oh, I'm sorry, a family with 8 kids
Oh,
and a
wow.
family with 6 kids doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I remember lining them all up on a bench. So it was the 8 kids, the 6 kids, and the 5 kids. We had like 19 kids. Did I do that math correctly? Yeah. 19 kids lined up on this like fence post or fence rail. Where we had this picture. I'm like, you guys, this is literally just 3 families.
Yeah.
So that made it a little bit easier. They started meeting friends on the road. And in that membership program, I would recommend it to any family in particular, or anybody who's going to be on the road longer term. It's a money saver for sure. But beyond that, it helps create connections. So there were people we met in California, and then we saw them again at a member campground in Oregon, or a member campground on the East Coast, or in the middle of the Midwest. We would often reconnect in Florida. Everybody, wants to be down in Florida for the winter. So we would come visit our friends for Christmas, but see all these friends that we'd met all over the United States who are RVers as well. We would congregate here in Florida and get to do a lot of things together here. And all the kids would play together all day long. And that was a really cool experience. So we had to help our kids rethink their own mindset and not think all the time about the friends they left behind, but say, remember so-and-so, isn't that a really important person in your life? Can you imagine if you had not met this person? If we just stayed at home, you would have never met these people. And so that helped them a little bit too.
That's awesome, because I know, from my perspective, the whole part of raising children is to expose them to so much of what the world has to offer.
Yes.
What people are out there, right? And situations are the ones that are going to really open their eyes to, number one, how to make friends faster, but also how to adapt and to be able to be a little bit more worldly themselves.
And we did a lot of teens who absolutely loved it, and preteens. So we met kids at all different ages who experienced it differently. Like us, within the same family, they experienced it differently. But think back, Sally, my goodness, look at the pioneers.
Yeah.
Look at the people who headed west, and who, just people who moved all the time, and they didn't get to FaceTime with family and friends. So it's not a completely new thing, the idea of moving and doing something different.
Yeah. I think what you initially talked about was how to be able to make an income on the road. And I think today it's so much easier.
Oh my goodness.
And especially in the last few years when everybody sort of moved back home to work, and companies found ways for people to do that. So you were sort of a little bit before that became the norm for people to work from home. But that's great that, I think that is opening up so many more doors for people to be able to travel wherever. My spouse and I, he was on the road for probably most of my sons growing up, and he'd be gone for months at a time. And one of the things I always wanted to do was find an opportunity that I could be wherever he is. And so now I have a few opportunities like that where I have the ability to earn income and travel wherever he is. And I tell you that the feeling of freedom and control that you have is just priceless. It is.
And there were a lot of people on the road who, like you were saying, wives who wanted to be with their husbands. Maybe if they were on the oil field, maybe they spent 4 months here and 6 months there. And, they'd be 2 weeks on and a week off. And the families were getting a little bit tired of, only getting that week or two with them, intermittently. So they said, why don't we go with them? Or, if we're going to be moving every few years anyhow for the military, for example, then why don't we just, do something where we just roll along and our whole home is with us. And so, but, in terms of, freedom, RVing can be very expensive if you want to get all the bells and whistles and be really fancy. There's no doubt about it. But it can also be very economical, even with the current fuel prices I mentioned earlier. It can be if you want it to be, and if you make those choices so that it can be. I always love I love helping people just plug in and find, what might be the right option for their family, because I know how much it meant to us. But we met people on the road, Sally, who maybe their goal wasn't to travel. Their goal was to build a house, right?
Yep.
So they would sell. Well, maybe they owned a house, they would sell it, or they stopped renting and moved into an RV, or they bought land and they were waiting for something to be built. So for a lot of people, RVing allowed them the ability to save some money while having a house be built,
Mhm.
or being able to save for a home, or being able to save. I met a lady who they lived off of her husband's income, and then they would travel. He was able to be virtual, and she did have to be at a location for 3 to 6 months at a time.
Okay.
So they would live off of his income and then save all of hers. And their goal in the end was to open a large business. And they were like able to really plow through and make that happen
Wow.
in just a few years' time. So
Mhm.
people had all different sorts of goals. Some wanted to see the world, and some just wanted to create stability for themselves.
Mhm. And to have that family atmosphere, right? Okay, so
Right.
one question I have, because I came from a
Yeah.
family of 5 girls. My parents had
Okay.
5 girls.
Aw,
And so I can relate to
that
the
must have been a
five.
little crazy in the
I
teen.
just have one son, so I sort of calmed it down a bit.
Aw,
But how do you travel with all the things that people would
oh,
normally need? Because I have a hard time just packing for a trip because I always have that 50-pound case. So how
I
did
know.
you manage that piece of it?
It's so ridiculous now because when I travel for a week, I feel like I bring more stuff than I had for 3 years. Yeah. But because, I can have that giant suitcase. So what we did was the only things that we put in storage were pieces of furniture that were maybe antique or sentimental for some reason, and that could not be found again. Most things you can just purchase again.
Yeah.
Things that were so that, or photos, anything
Mhm.
sentimental, that went into storage. To go on the road, oh my goodness, Sally, we downsized 90% of our stuff, right? So where each one of us in our house, like I have a walk-in closet, my husband has a walk-in closet, the kids have their closets, right? We literally fit everything for 5 people in a space 1/3 the size of my own closet, right? So we each had one drawer for daytime clothes. And we had, like those Sterilite containers.
Yeah,
We're not
yeah.
talking massive drawers. And we each had one very small drawer or space for like pajamas, socks, undies, all that good stuff. Swimsuits, all the other stuff went in that. And then each of the kids had one very small drawer as well. Each of us had one small drawer to hold personal items that they just wanted to keep near, So the kids, it was usually something they found. It could be a souvenir, some memories from back home, but it was stuff that was easily accessible in the bedroom of the RV.
Okay.
And then I had one drawer that was all of our, documentation kind of stuff as well. And then finally, for the fun stuff for the kids, we gave them one like Sterilite box about this big, and everything else that they wanted to take with them had to fit in that.
Oh, wow.
The rule was if you pick up anything else on the road, it has to fit in that box. So between the drawer and the box. So if you are at capacity, you need to decide what goes to make room for the new thing. And so it forced that kind of thinking and a lot of introspection about, do I really, 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 really want this? Is it really that important?
That's hard.
Yeah, being back, I swore I would never go through that again. Like we're never going to accumulate all the junk and stuff and everything. And my kids now have like 100 teddy bears or something. It's ridiculous. But that one of the good things is we were able to tell family and friends who wanted to buy gifts for our children, like make sure it's something consumable that, maybe a craft that they can make. And, that made it a lot easier. We don't have the excuse of space anymore, to talk about that. But I can tell you the happiest time of my life was being on the road. It was just so wonderful. Like I feel that 400 square feet is more my home than my home that I'm in now, if that makes sense, just because what a blessing it was to our family.
And the memories that you've created now with the whole family of what's possible, but also just living differently than most people choose to live, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Now you homeschool though. So what about the whole homeschooling stuff? Because I imagine there's a bit of that.
So yeah, we did have to do a big shift in that as well. I love to be really hands-on with homeschooling my kids, but that takes a lot of books that I have, that they have. And as it was, even though we pared down a lot, we did a lot of like a shift online programs,
Okay, yeah.
like with math and stuff. They had online textbooks and stuff like that. They would submit all their questions and answers and all that online. And in history as well. So we used to have dozens and dozens of history books every year that we would read through. So now they had like an online program. We still took like 200 books, even though we pared it down. I mean, a lot of them, to be fair, were readers for younger ages, because I had to teach my children to read. So the younger ones were reading through those little books, but it was still, we got rid of most of it.
Oh my goodness. I can imagine 200 books you're taking with you. And everybody's pared down to one drawer.
Yeah. And we literally had one computer that everybody had to share. So it was a balance. If we were limited by data or limited by just connectivity, we would have to say, okay, sometimes you have today as a break, but on Saturday we'll be in a better area, and you're going to have to be school on a Saturday to make up for having Wednesday and Thursday off. You know what I mean? So we would have to just adjust. Yeah.
So now you told me that you had gone to all 50 states. Yeah. And so tell us a little bit about your adventures as far as where you went and timing.
Oh goodness. I would have loved to have spent like a month or two in every state. It just was, there was so much to see. And we finally came to the conclusion there's no amount of time that would let you see it all. None. You could do this for decades and you're not going to see it all. So in the beginning, I remember being stressed out because I had only the first week planned of where we were going to stay. Right. And I'm like, I don't even have a home. Like, I don't know where we're going to be in a week. Oh my gosh. And I got so jealous. You know how we compare ourselves and get jealous. I got really jealous because we met another couple doing this, and the wife had planned 6 months worth of all of their reservations. They were already made. They knew exactly where they were going and how long they were there. And I was so, I wasn't like jealous in the sense that I didn't want her to have that, but that I felt lesser than, because it was the comparison thing, right? Like, I haven't done that. I haven't thought it through. I don't even have time to sit down and plan out 6 months. That's insanity, right? However, I can tell you that I did learn that as you travel, the locals and the people who have traveled before you, there are Facebook forums for people. So we would just say, hey, we're going to be in this area. Any suggestions? Right. And we would get like 58 comments of, you need to do this and you need to do that. And we would have to like pick a select few. But I can't tell you the number of times we went to a place thinking we would be there for 2 nights, 3 nights, and we ended up there for like a week or two. Nice. And as we got there and discovered there was so much more to see that the locals knew about, or that other people knew about, and it was just completely off of our radar. So if I had had those 6 months planned out in advance, that could have never happened without me literally calling every single place and adjusting the schedule from there on out. So in the end, we'd be like driving along sometimes, and I would say, well, I'm getting a little tired, so how about we stop in about 2 hours? And go, okay. So about an hour and a half later, I would start looking for where we were going to stay for the night. Like literally half an hour before we had to stop.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is that, part of what a lot of us do is we count so much on our plan that we don't have the opportunity to experience the extra things that show up when we're winging it.
I cannot tell you how much we would have missed out on. It was really an enriching experience to allow room for the unknown to become possible.
Awesome. So what do you think was the biggest win for the whole family in this adventure?
Oh my goodness. Let's see. I think that the biggest win was just learning to rework our mindset, because that's applicable in all of life, right? So once you realize that really good things can come from letting go of control over everything, I think that is something that can be applied in work, in plans for career, in even plans for the day. I am so much more relaxed now than I was prior to this. Whereas before, our day and our week, even with homeschool, it was really, really planned out. We were involved in everything imaginable to be involved in, right? That my kids were in all the things. And now I've been really protective of our time so that I'm creating time freedom so that if a friend calls and they want to do something that day, or that, then we can just go. And I'm not obligated every second of every day to something.
Good. Yeah, because that's a big piece of the puzzle, right? Is to understand the value of that time freedom.
Yes, exactly.
And creating the moments.
Right, exactly.
So now if someone else was considering doing an adventure that like you did, what would you give as far as advice?
I would say if this is something you really, really want, you will be able to find a way to rework everything to make it happen. On these Facebook forums that I talked about, there were a lot of people, thousands and thousands of people who were doing what we did, but many more who pined for it, right? Who longed to do it, who would talk about all of the reasons they couldn't. Like, I would love to do this, but I would love to do that. But, and sometimes a medical condition does prevent it. I mean, people with medical conditions found a way to make it work, but sometimes there are those people really are, locked into an area for a certain time. And I understand that. But there were a lot of people for whom it was just, they did not want to rethink how to do things. And they didn't want to rethink how life should look. We have this concept. Our parents, they were not on board at all, not in the beginning, because their concept of what is right was what was normal. And unless you're willing to kind of break out of that and literally rethink every single aspect of your life and how it can be done, you're probably going to tell yourself all the reasons why you can't do it instead of how to make it happen.
And you were on the road for 3 months or 3 years.
3 years. Yeah.
3
we
years,
thought a year, maybe 2. It ended up being 3. So if there was one thing I could do differently, I would probably have sold the house rather than rented it out. We were really afraid, like, what if we sell it and then we're priced out of our area when we moved back? And that, was a real concern. But honestly, it would have made more sense just sell it, invest the equity while you're on the road or something, because it ended up being not just a lot of work for maintenance and that kind of thing, but it made us, like, it was the reason we had to come off the road after 3 years. In the US, we have like these tax laws, you can be out of the house for 3 years. And then, so because of that, we ended up, ending it. And I think that it's right. I mean, I think for us, it worked out that way for a reason. But on the same token, hanging onto it just was like a thread that we probably should have cut.
Yeah. Okay, good advice. So now, what is one myth that people have about the on the road lifestyle?
that you're on a permanent vacation. Because we are getting to see everything, and most people don't get to see those unless they are on vacation, right? Like, we would be in Bryce National Park one day and then Zion the next, and then zooming off to California or Arizona, it just it did. Like, I remember one time writing on my in Facebook, I said, we are so looking forward to our vacation to Hawaii. That was a vacation because my husband took off work and we all went, and there were no responsibilities, right? And people were like, what are you talking about? You live on vacation. I'm like, okay, but think about that. My husband has to work all day long. And we have to school all day long, and everything else we do, everything we visit, like, since those are priorities, everything else we visit has to fit in around those priorities. Like, I wasn't going to give up my kids' education or our career, my husband's career, so that we could see local sites. So, but imagine like doing work and doing school in this super tight space actually makes it a little bit more difficult and a little bit more challenging in some ways, especially just with noise level.
Yeah.
So we needed a vacation where I was getting away, there were no responsibilities, and we didn't have to think too much about just the things that had to be done to keep it moving. Yeah.
So it's like any home that you're living in. Just because
Right.
yours is on wheels doesn't make it any different than a normal home. You're just in different places.
And it was very exciting. I'm not gonna lie, like that was amazing. It was just, I can't even tell people, you know, my biggest surprise was honestly that it wasn't even the places that I loved most. It was the people. We met so many types of people.
Yeah. Well,
and they were,
that's part of vacationing, right? People from all over the world. And in this case, so many people that have different reasons as to why they've chosen that lifestyle. Which is interesting.
And so like I said, we met people all over the board for different reasons they were in it, but there was like this camaraderie and a feeling of real connection with people who were willing to do something so different.
Yeah.
You know,
that's awesome. So that's the big heart piece of it.
Yeah.
The big part's the connection with all those people. And now you have this massive network, I'm sure, of people that you've met all over North America.
Yes.
Did you actually make it to Alaska?
Oh, we loved it. Yes. Yeah. We took the ferry. We couldn't decide between, I really wanted to see the Inside Passage, but we knew if we took a cruise, it would be, it would really limit the places we could see in Alaska. And everyone kept saying that going through Canada was so beautiful and you will absolutely love the drive. A little secret, I really hate driving. Like I hate road trips. It's so bizarre that I hate road trips and I love this so much. It was different because we were, you know, able to spread out a little bit. That probably helped. I even get motion sickness in the RV.
Oh no.
Now I've learned I can take ginger and it helps completely. But for 3 years, I didn't know that. And so I just endured it, but it was all worth it. But in any case, we did discover that, you know, we could take a ferry and it was much lower cost than, you know, a typical cruise. And we were able to put the motorhome right on the ferry and take it up with us to Alaska. And people were not kidding. That drive, as soon as we entered British Columbia from Washington, it was like night and day difference. And it was beautiful all the way up. And Canada has created some amazing boondocking spots where you just dry dock and you're not connected, but you just park for the night. And essentially anywhere off the road, you're allowed to do that. They create little areas, you know, you've seen it. And so we enjoyed it so much.
Oh, nice. So you made all 50 states.
Yes.
A few of the provinces in Canada. You spent 3 years with a family of 7 in one RV, 400 square feet, you're telling me.
I think the one bathroom was even more challenging than the square footage. Yeah.
I grew up in a farmhouse with the 7 of us with one bathroom and 6 women and 1 man. So
oh my God. That is a big challenge.
That was back in the day.
Wow.
So this has been really entertaining, but I have a couple more quick questions for you.
Yeah.
So what are the 3 books that you would recommend to listeners that would help them with this? Or just books that you would use to inspire
They're
them?
not even, I mean, there are all kinds of, just, you can Google RVing and there are all kinds of things you can find about how to do it and how to, you know, find what's right for your family. Or you can just talk to people. I mean, like, I'm happy to talk to people, right, about it. So the books I would recommend actually have more to do with like personal relationships and understanding people, right? So the one I love the most, I love The 5 Love Languages. Essentially, it's by Gary Chapman, and it essentially tells you that however you feel love tends to be how you express love. But if somebody has a different love language, and you're expressing it in the way you like to feel loved, but that's not how they feel, you know what I mean? Then they're not going to feel it. So they're like words of affirmation, acts of service, physical touch, you know, things like gifts and things like that. So essentially it helps you to understand the people around you and how to interact with them in a way that makes them feel loved and cared about, right?
Yeah,
So that's a really important one, I feel.
Mhm.
The other one for me that was a lifeline was the Bible. I mean,
Yeah.
that's something I had to read every single day just because, like I said, that is my security, right?
Mhm.
And then another one that I love, it's a book from a long time ago that I think back to all the time, and it has nothing at all to do with RVing. And you're going to think this is so bizarre, is The Grapes of Wrath.
Okay.
I know it's such a bizarre thing to think about with this, but honestly, it is one of those things that helped me think in a different way,
Mhm.
and recognize everything I have for which to be grateful,
Mm.
right?
Yes,
And
yes.
because it's historical fiction, you're following, a fictional family, but it gives you the real sense like of what my grandparents went through. They were married in the middle of the Great Depression, for
Yeah.
example, here in the US. And so for me, that is all about perspective. And I
Mhm.
feel like, again, it's one of those areas that can be applied to your whole life. Now, if you want something more modern, A Long Walk to Water,
Oh,
that's a
I've
real
heard of that
one.
one.
That's a real, you've heard of it?
No, I haven't heard of that one. I'm going to write that one down.
It's about girls who, live in areas where they cannot get an education, for example,
Mm.
because they have to walk 2 to 4 hours every day just to get the day's water for their family.
Mhm.
So when you read about that, again, that helps you with perspective, just to
Yes.
feel grateful for everything that we have been given.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just
absolutely.
can't stress that. Yeah, I can't stress that enough.
Those are all great books. And I think, your perspective is all about tapping into your higher power, but also to be able to really bring that gratitude and perspective to what you've doing in your own life and your own personal life for your children. So now, have you written a book yet?
No, I've thought about it so many times.
Well, if you were
But
to
I
write a
haven't
book,
done it. So,
why haven't you done it? You need to do it.
uh,
What
I
would you
don't
write
know.
about?
I haven't done it. Maybe just probably because I need to reorganize my time a little bit to sit down and just, focus on doing that.
Mhm. If you were to write a book, what would you write about?
Rethinking expectations, like when the deepest frustrations we get are often when we have unmet expectations. And that's where a lot of arguments begin
Yeah.
there. That's why people, maybe on a birthday or Christmas or Easter, whenever they have a big celebration in their life, sometimes arguments or frustrations develop on those very special days that should be so amazing. You hear about these bridezillas, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They want everything perfect. They want everything to be just right. And so what makes people get so upset on these very special occasions? And it's because we set super high expectations
Mhm.
for all of the stuff. And in the end, you're still going to be married. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And you're still going to have graduated from high school or college or whatever. And it's still going to be wonderful. It's going to be a memory you cherish.
Mhm.
So I think if we rethink our expectations and don't hold so tightly to
Mhm.
them becoming a reality, it will help us to be happier in general.
Mhm. Great
Yeah.
idea. You
Yeah.
go get that penned, girl.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll tell you. Have you ever seen that movie RV
Yes.
with Robin Williams? I feel like we lived that movie. On my son's birthday, I went out to get candles. I'd made him a cake. We were landing in San Francisco that day. We just pulled into our spot, and I had seen a grocery store like 2 blocks away. I said, I'm going to go get candles. And I was in the line paying for them when I got a phone call from my husband. And he said, make sure you bring home a rug doctor. And I said, a rug doctor, what happened? And he goes, just bring it home. Don't question. And I'm giving my son's 14th birthday. And I'm like, okay. So I get home, and I kid you not, there was raw sewage backed up into my living room, my kitchen.
Oh.
About not being the birthday that he
Yeah.
really wanted, right? Or that I wanted for him. And I'm like, what happened here? And without getting into the details of tanks, he had essentially left water on to flush the tank and forgot to turn it off, and it has nowhere to go up.
Oh, yum.
And I'm like, oh my God. My husband was fortunately wise enough to not ask me to clean it.
Yeah, very good. Just
I
pick the
can't
rug
handle
doctor up, honey.
stuff very well. What's that?
Just pick the rug doctor up, honey.
But I have to tell you, like, we laugh about that all the time now. Like when birthdays come around and something happens, it's like, hey, at least there's not raw sewage on the floor, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, things happen, circumstance happens. Don't let it take you off your goals.
Right.
That's awesome. So I really appreciate your time today. Is there any last tips or information that you want to share with the viewers today?
I just would reiterate that learning to go with the flow will give you just light years of progress toward, being able to do, and not just RVing, but anything different that you want to do. Yeah. If you want to be an expatriate and live in another country, like we were going to do with France, or if you want to live on a houseboat, or if you just want to totally shift careers in the middle of your life and try something new and different, I feel like resetting your mind and doing those shifts and just learning to kind of go with the flow and make the changes that are necessary to achieve your dreams are all just really good ways to actually get there. Absolutely.
I completely agree 100%.
Thank you,
that
Sally.
Mindset is exactly what we need to focus on, and the possibilities. So I think that that's exactly what you've been able to share today, was the possibilities, and just seeing the joy in your smile and in your face. I can tell that it was just the most amazing time for you and your family. Yes. And so really appreciate you sharing that with us today. So now if anybody's interested in connecting with you, where can they find you?
So there are a couple of different ways to find us. Like if you really want to go and look at our old blog, we weren't doing it. We know people on the road who are doing it to make an income, YouTubers and that kind of thing. But we just kind of let family watch our travels with a YouTube channel, and that is Chase the Sky, the Sky, no spaces. That's on YouTube. There's kind of a fun video on there that got 7 million views.
Oh, wow.
But it's not for what you would think. It has nothing. We were at the Hoover Dam, and essentially, so we were there in about, we took like a 17-second video. I think it was 19 seconds, super short video to show that when you pour water over the Hoover Dam, the updraft makes it blow like 10 overhead, land 10 feet behind you. So we were just trying to show that. And in the middle of this, like this little, everyone called it the Batmobile, this cool little 3-wheeled car drove behind me. So that got a lot of attention. But Business Insider then contacted us and said, hey, we want to include your video in a video that we're sending out about like scientific, like these anomalies that happen or whatever. And it's not really an anomaly. It's literally just the updraft, obeying the law of physics. But we had titled it "Water Defies Gravity" using quotation marks and then explain exactly why it was doing that, However, it ended up in India, and somebody caught wind of this, and they started passing along the word that this dumb American really thought that water defied the laws of physics. And so it went like completely viral. And I mean, it had been sitting there for months and only our family had seen it, right? And all of a sudden, we are getting all these messages like, if you think that, that it's, why don't you jump off? If you think, I mean, crazy mean stuff. If you think that, you can defy gravity there, why don't you try all these bizarre things, right? And my kids were like, that is so mean. Who would say that, Mom? But they did not understand the grammatical connotation of like quotation marks, and they had not read our explanation. So everybody, I essentially went viral for being the American dunce. No. For everybody just thought I was so stupid. And we went to, in the middle of all this, we were again back, we went to San Francisco twice, and we went to Muir Woods. I remember getting out of the car, and there was an Indian family who was parked next to us, and they got out of their car, and we start walking along, and they went,
You're a celebrity.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, those people think I'm the complete moron. I know it.
That's okay. That's
So
what happens.
yeah,
They know
yeah.
you for one.
So
And most likely they couldn't remember why they knew the face, but they knew the face.
oh yeah, you're just making me feel better. But in any case, that's our YouTube, Chase the Sky. Jenny Anna 33 is Instagram. That's JENNIANA 33. That's me on Instagram. I just share motivational things on there because I love to encourage people. And then on Facebook, it's just my name, Jennifer Elhajj, and there aren't any others really in the world that I know of. So that's easy to find. If you do try to friend me, just send me a little message letting me know how you heard about me, that it was through Sally Speaks. And if you want to connect, I'm super happy to answer questions for people. I love it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So
You're
I
welcome.
really appreciate you getting together with me today. It's been so much fun. You've got so much beautiful spirit that you're sharing, and your story is just going to touch so many different families and different people, because I know there's people searching for joy, like the joy
Yeah.
that you've created with your family, and looking for adventures that are different than what we're told is the norm and
Right.
what path is to follow. So I really appreciate you sharing openly about that. In my opinion, life is a story, so make it a bestseller. Thank
Awesome.
you for joining
That's
me
great.
today, Jennifer. It was so nice to see you again.
Well, thank you. It was fun to relive it. So
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great
thank you,
day.
Sally. Have a great day.